Hey guys, this is Andrew with rockclass101.com, and in this week's ukulele lesson, you're going to meet our new instructor, Sammy Turton, who's going to be teaching you how to play the theme song from Interstellar. Now, this is actually one of my favorite movies of all time, so much so that I wrote my own composition inspired by it, which you can check out by clicking that link right there. I'll also link it in the description box below. But let's take a step back. Let's talk about this arrangement. Now, I think the coolest thing about this arrangement is the use of harmonics. And if you're familiar with Sammy's playing, you know that harmonics are kind of his thing. Now, while they are the coolest part of this arrangement, in my opinion, I think they're also the most challenging part of this arrangement. So, every harmonic that Sammy plays is played using the plucked method, which looks and sounds a little bit like that. Now, if you do not know how to do that technique, you want to jump into our harmonics course, which I'll link right there, as well as in the description box below. That course actually teaches you 3 ways to play harmonics. One of the ways is the plucked method that I just demoed. Another way is by tapping, which is really, really cool. And I'll leave the third one as a fun surprise for you to find out. But jump into that course. You can learn how to do the mechanics for the plucked method 100% for free. You'll need to know how to do it to be able to play this arrangement. Now, with all that said, let's talk a little bit about this lesson, because for this song, we're actually going to split the lesson in half. So this video, which is our part 1 lesson, Sammy's going to be teaching you how to play the first half of the tune. If you want to learn the second half of the song, Sammy's going to be teaching that in the part 2 lesson, which you can watch by clicking that link or going to the site, rockclass101.com, doing a search for the song's name. Now, also on that page are the tabs that you can print off to follow along with, plus the really cool interactive on-screen tab viewer. Now, this is a great feature where you can hit play, you can watch the tabs scroll across in real time, you can highlight bars to loop sections, slow it down to any speed you wish. Just a great asset in learning this tune that much easier. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Sammy to teach you how to play this. Don't forget to grab the low G ukulele to follow along with, and I'll catch you at the end of the video.
Hello, I'm Sammy, aka 4-String Boy, and today for the Interstellar main theme, we're going to be looking at a little bit of fingerstyle, a little bit of strumming, but most importantly, harmonics. This for me is one of the most epic pieces of film music to come out in the last, I don't know how many years. It's very famous, I absolutely adore it. And for you to be able to play it, you're going to need a ukulele tuned low G, so G, C, E, A. But it does also work nicely on a high G. I just think it will get bigger depth and better sound on low G tuning. Just before we start, Interstellar main theme is in the time signature 3/4. So that means the count throughout is either on our quarter notes 1, 2, 3, or for our eighth notes 1 and 2 and 3 and. That's all. We got 3, no 4. Okay, so for bar 1 here, actually all we have to do is play 3 quarter notes on the E string. So we're just going to play E, 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 with just saying 1, 2, 3. But we need to do something a little bit special. So if you look at the very first note in bar 1, that's tabbed, beat 1, you'll see that we have basically a little AH above it. We have our 0 over the tab, and then we have a nice 12 in these terrifying parentheses. Now, essentially, that just means that we have to play a harmonic instead. Now, when I play harmonics, I completely use my plucking hand. So that means I'm going to use my index finger, pop it on the string that I need to pluck on the right fret, which is the 12th fret here, right in the line. And then I use my thumb to pluck, and then remove both at the same time. If you used harmonics, it's no problem. If you've never played harmonics before, then there's a lovely course on Rock Class 101 that will help you all the way through them. But harmonics just require patience, and the main thing is timing. So basically, when you pluck, it's about removing this finger and your thumb at exactly the same time. And that's how you get your clearest harmonics. So that means on the beat of 1, actually, we're going to play the harmonic. 1, 2, 3. And that's followed then by 2 plucks of the E string. So they're all E string plucks, but beat 1, harmonic. And then the second 2 beats, we have just the plucking of the E string. So if I was to count that, I'm literally just going 1, 2, 3. Now the good news is that bar 2 is exactly the same. So we're going to do exactly the same harmonic on the beat of 1. 1, 2, 3. And then if we look at bar 3, that's also the same. This is great news so far. So again, harmonic on the beat of 1. 1, 2, 3. And then we're plucking the E string of beats 2 and 3. And then finally, for the last bar, we're just playing just 3 open E strings. There are no harmonics here. So we'll just simply, again, quarter notes, be going 1, 2, 3. So essentially bars 1, 2, and 3 are exactly the same. And then we have bar 4 that just has no harmonics. Let's play them through. So we need to go 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Now, that's it. That's our intro complete. But we have a little extra musical thing that we can add if we want to. And that is, if we look just underneath the tab, we have this kind of hair clip looking thing. And that's called a crescendo. And that just means that throughout, we're going to get louder as we progress through these bars. So really what that means is from bar 1, we have to start off really quietly and then gradually through those 4 bars get louder. Now, this is something we call dynamics in music. It's just essentially the volume of things. It's actually very difficult, okay? So if this is out of your comfort zone, don't worry about it. Don't worry with the dynamics. But if you're in control of that, then actually when we start with bar 1, we're going to start off really quietly, and then we're going to get louder. And when I say when we get louder, our end goal is basically to be at our normal playing volume. We're not just whacking the uke as hard as we can. So let's play bars 1 to 4 with the dynamics as written. So we would go 1, 2, 3. So notice throughout there, we just gradually got louder and we started off very quietly. Intro done. Right, the next thing we have to run into is our theme, and we're going to break it down into 3 separate parts so it's easier to manage. Throughout this theme, part 1, part 2, and part 3, we're actually only really going to need 2 different chord shapes. Yes, on the sheet there's going to be lots of different names, but in reality, it's just 2 chord shapes. So if we look at bar 5, we can put an A minor chord together. 2, 0, 0, 2. Now for this particular A minor, I would advise using your middle finger because it's going to make it easier to transition to the next chord. So if you are used to doing it with your index finger, try and play this A minor with your middle finger. So the first thing we're going to do is pinch the G and A strings together. Now for my fingerstyle throughout this piece, I'm using my thumb to pluck the G, my thumb to pluck the C, my index to pluck the E, and then my middle to pluck the A. If you're using Pima, where you use all 4 fingers instead, that's totally fine. Do whatever you find is most comfortable. So once we put the G and the A, we're actually going to pluck the E string with our index finger straight after. Now I recommend seeing all the bars in basically patterns of 2. So technically what we just did was a pattern of 2. 1, 2. So our next pattern of 2, we're going to pluck the A string with our middle finger, and then followed by plucking the E string with our index finger. Now the whole time I'm doing this, I've kept the A minor chord on the fretboard. I'm still pushing down because I want the sustain of that low G string continually ringing out throughout the bar. So that means we start off with pinching G and A, followed by E string. We then pluck the A string, then the E string, and then we have to pluck the A string again, and the E string. Now these are all 8th notes, so it should go 1 and 2 and 3 and. And for the whole of theme 1, we're keeping it really, really, really robotic like this. Everything is 8th notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and. It's never going to break that pattern. So moving on to bar 6, we're essentially going to keep the same pattern on our right hand, but the chord is going to change in our left hand. Now, this is quite a unique shape, and essentially it's an octave shape. So how I want you to play this, I want you to use your index finger on the 2nd fret of the A string, and then we're going to use our ring finger on the 4th fret of the G string. And if we pinch those 2 strings together, what we get is an octave. Essentially, I've got a low B here and a high B here. Now, this shape at the moment is the one that we're going to use to move all around the neck constantly. So it's a good idea to try and memorize the shape. Essentially, your index finger is on the A string, and then 2 frets higher, your ring finger is on the G string. So no matter where I move that shape on the fretboard, it's always going to be index on the A string and then 2 frets higher on the G string with your ring finger. Okay, it's a movable shape, and it's just what we call an octave. So for bar 6, we start off with a pinch of G and A, and then followed by an E pluck with your index finger. 1 and. And then again, just like bar 5, we're going to follow that with a pluck of the A string, E string, A string, E string. So altogether, we pinch G and A, E string, A string, E string, A string, E string. And if I count that out, we go 1 and 2 and 3 and. For bar 7, we're actually going to keep holding the same chord shape. We're not going to have any pinches in this. Essentially, we're just going to play the whole thing alternating between plucking the A and the E. We go A, E, A, E, A, E. And again, if I counted that out, I'll be going 1 and 2 and 3 and. So bars 5 and 6 feel very much the same on your plucking hand, whereas bar 7, we just don't have the pinch. Okay, so let's run through 5, 6, and 7 together. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Now the shape of the octave on the sheet is labeled an A minor/B. This shape might give you a little bit of grief to start with because it's quite likely you've never played this shape before, but like I said, for the whole theme 1, we're going to be using this shape just moving up and down the fretboard. So don't worry, by the end of theme 1, you'll be an absolute professional in playing this shape right here. So moving on to bar 8, we come back to our A minor, and again we're going to use our middle finger for that. So we pinch the G and A and then pluck the E after. Straight after that, we're moving to our octave shape that we just used, 4 on the G, 2 on the A. And we're going to pinch G and A again, and then pluck our E string. And then essentially, we're going to take this shape, this octave shape, and just move it up a fret. So now your index finger should be on fret 3, and your ring finger should be on fret 5. And again, you can pluck those two together, and just make sure the 2 notes are identical. And again, we're going to pluck G and A, and then pluck your E string afterwards. So bar 8, counting wise, we end up going 1 and 2 and 3 and. So it introduces some more movement, but now coming on to bar 9, essentially more movement. We're going to keep this shape that we just played, this 3 and 5 octave, and we're going to move it down a fret back to our A minor/B, which is our octave. So we've got 4 and 2 on the G and A. And we're going to pinch G and A strings, pluck your E string, and then next we'll move down to our A minor with our middle finger. We pluck G and A, and then your E string, and then we're going to come straight back to your B octave, your A minor/B, pinch G and A, and pluck the E string. So bar 9 will go 1 and 2 and 3 and. And then finally for bar 10, we're going to keep this octave shape again and move it up a fret. So now we're on 5 and 3, which we were earlier. And this time we're going back to the pattern from bar 1. So that means we pinch G and A, followed by pluck the E string, and then A string, E string, A string, E string. So bar 10 would go G and A, E, A, E, A, E. And counting wise, we're going 1 and 2 and 3 and. So if I play bars 8, 9, and 10, we should go 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. So on to bar 11, only 2 more bars. So we've literally just ended on this A minor/C, 3 and 5 here. So what we have to do is then bring it down a fret back to our B octave. And again, this pattern is the same as bar 1 or bar 2. So you're going to pinch G and A, pluck your E, A, E, A, E. And just counting that, that would be 1 and 2 2, and 3, and then for bar 12, we have no pinch. It's just alternating between the A and E strings. A, E, A, E, A, E. So bars 11 and 12, we'd go 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and again, even for that second bar 12, I'm never letting go of that initial shape. Okay, so that's part 1 of theme 1 complete. Let's have a little playthrough of the whole of that section. 1 and 2 and 3 and. So initially, when we first get to learning this tune, it can seem that like there's absolutely no pattern to it and that it's just crazy numbers going everywhere. But again, if you take it slowly, count it out when you're playing, you can just kind of follow the sheet until your ears will learn it. I promise they will. Okay, so now we actually start part 2 of theme 1. So for bar 13, we need to start with our A minor again. And again, I'm going to use my middle finger, but we have a big jump coming here. So if you find it easier, you can use your index finger instead. I always advise trying both so it's easier. So we go for our A minor. We pinch G and A, pluck your E string, A string, E string. So that's 1 and 2 and we need to get all the way up here. Now this is the same octave shape we've been using. So that means on the A string, we need the 7th fret with your index finger, and then with the G string, you're going to have the 9th fret with your ring finger. Again, it's always a 2 fret gap to make that octave. And on the sheet, that'll be an A minor / E, and this is an E octave. So once we get all the way up here, essentially what we're going to do is pinch a G in the A, and then pluck your E string. So that means we end up going 1 and 2 and 3 and. Now that's a big jump. In order to make it easiest, I recommend that we start to move basically the last time you pluck your E string on the and of 2. So we go 1 and 2 and on that and is where we start to move. So let me play that nice and slowly. 1 and 2 and 3 and. It's a big old jump, but just to get your hand used to it, if you find it difficult, just practice going from the initial A minor, pinching that, and then getting your hand up to the A minor / E, the E octave, and pinching those two, and just moving between the two will build up your muscle memory quickly, and you don't have to have the complications of the piece. So moving on to bar 14, we now keep our octave shape, but we move all the way back down to the 3 and 5, which is a C octave, A minor / C. So this is the same pattern that again we played in bar 1 and 2. We pinch G and A, followed by E string, A, E, A, E. And counting wise, 1 and 2 and 3 and. Then for bar 15, we're just moving down a fret again to that B octave. I'm going to do the same technique, pinch G and A, E, A, E, A, E. And then for bar 16, we've got basically that bar with no pinch again. So we just go A, E, A, E, A, E. So 14, 15, and 16, we'll end up going 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. So next we're going to bar 17, and this is possibly the biggest test of your octave shape here, because essentially we're going to play the A minor, move up to the E octave, which is 7 and 9, and then all the way back down to your C, 3 and 5, all in one bar. So again, if we kind of see it as in pairs, we take our A minor, and again I'm using my middle finger here, pinch G and A, followed by E string. Then we move all the way up to the 7th and 9th fret here, pinch G and A, pluck your E string. And then we move all the way down to 3 and 5, pinch G and A and E string. So that ends up going 1 and 2 and 3 and. That's a big distance to travel, so again, we practice that nice and slowly. 1 and 2 and 3 and. Bar 18, we've met before, is the same as bar 9. So we take our octave, we move to the 2 and the 4 on the B octave. We play pinch G and A, E string, move down to your A minor, pinch G and A, E string, and then back up to your B octave, pinch G and A, E string. So bar 18 goes 1 and 2 and 3 and. And then for bar 19, we simply move up a fret from there. So we've got the 3 and the 5, the A minor slash C, or the C octave. We're going to pinch G and A, followed by E, A, E, A, E. Same pattern we've seen in so many bars. So 17, 18, and 19, we end up going 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. And that brings us to the last 2 bars of theme 1 part 2. These two we've already played before, they're a doozy. So from our C octave we move down a fret, so we've got A minor slash B, our B octave 2 and 4, and then we're going to play the same pattern that we played for bars 6 and 7. So basically that means we pinch, play the E, A, E, and that's followed by bar 21, which is just A, E, A, E, A, E. So 20 and 21, we go 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Right, so now let's have a little playthrough of the whole of theme 1 part 2. This is one of the harder ones to remember. It's kind of, again, trying to use your ears to locate into the octaves. And here are the A, E, C, B. And the more you listen to that, the more you'll get used to. That's the melody. That's essentially what's driving the whole piece. The extra notes on top, they're kind of just filler, really. Theme 1 part 2, let's go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 2. So that only leaves part 3 of theme 1, and don't worry, actually it's very similar to part 2. It's almost like a little cut down version. So in my opinion, part 2 is the hardest. You've done it, good job. Let's talk about part 3. So let's take the 2 hardest bars from part 2 and start with them. So that means we start with that A minor, we pinch G and A, followed by the E string. We go all the way up to this E octave again, 7 and 9, pinch G and A, E, and then down to our C octave, 3 and 5, pinch G and A, C. So bar 22 goes 1 and 2 and 3 and. Now that's followed by the same pattern we had last time. So for bar 23, we move down to our B octave, 2 and 4. We pluck G and A, E string, down to your A minor, pluck G and A, E, and then back up to your B, G and A, E. So 23 is 1 and 2 and 3 and. There we go. For bar 24, we're just moving up a fret to our C octave, and this is this nice pattern that we started with. Again, we pinch G and A, E, A, E, A, E. And again, counting wise, we'd count that 1 and 2 and 3 and. And then we do something that we haven't seen yet. We actually take this same shape, but we're going to move up 2 frets. So this is a D octave. So that means your index finger is on the 5th fret of the A string, and your ring finger should be on the 7th fret of the G string. Now, in our plucking hand, we're going to play the same pattern that we just did. So that means we pinch G and A, E, A, E, A, E. So exactly the same pattern as 24, we've just moved up 2 frets. So 23, 24, and 25 should sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3, and 1, and 2, and 3, and. So for our final line, for bar 26, we're going to take the same shape and move up 2 frets, and that takes us to our E octave, the 7 and the 9 who we met before. And we're going to play the same pattern. We're going to pinch G and A, E, A, E, A, E. And then for bar 27, we're going to do the exact same thing, same chord. So we pinch G and A, E, A, E, A, E. Now for bar 28, we're going to keep the shape that we've got here, but we're actually going to do a 3-finger pinch. So we're going to pinch the G, E, and A strings all at the same time. And we're going to pluck these on the quarter notes. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. And again, if I'm counting eighth notes, I'm just playing on the numbers. 1, and 2, and 3, and. And bar 29 is the exact same thing. We're going to do the same 3-finger pluck. 1, and 2, and 3, and. So 26, 27, 28, 29, all based around the same left-hand shape. We don't move. This is how they go. 1, and 2, and 3, and 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 1, and 2, and 3, and. See, told you, short and sweet. Okay, so if you survive part 2, part 3, much nicer. Well, I say much nicer, mostly the same. Okay, so now here's a full playthrough of theme 1, part 3. 1, and 2, and 3, and 1, and 2. Okay, so into theme 2, part 1. And this is probably the most recognizable part of the theme. If you ever heard clips of Interstellar, etc., this is always the part that comes through. On the ukulele, it's really fun to play. We're going to need 4 chords in total. So if we start with bar 30, we need an F major 7. And in this voicing, we're going to use our middle finger on the 5th fret G string, our ring finger on the 5th fret C string, and then E and A are all open. And essentially what we're going to do, we're going to give that a nice big down strum. Now I strum down with my thumb because you want kind of a nice soft tone for that. If you usually use your index finger, nail and stuff, you can use that, but I do recommend that you try using your thumb pad because we want a nice soft strum just going down. So after we do that strum, we come to another harmonic, and we need to play the same harmonic that we played earlier, and that is on the 12th fret of the E string. Now essentially what we have to do is strum down on the beat of 1, and then the beat of 2, we need to play that harmonic, and that sustains the beat of 3. So we end up going 1, 2, 3. And again, we've just come from 8th notes, so we can count that as 1, and 2, and 3, and. So bar 31 will be exactly the same. We strum down on the F major 7, and then we pluck that single harmonic on the E string. Now for bar 32, we come to a G6 chord. That's 0, 2, 0, 2. I always think of it as a G major, just missing your ring finger. And again, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to do a down strum on the beat of 1 and on the beat of 2. We're going to play that same harmonic on the 12th fret on the E string. So bars 32 and 33 will both be the same. They sound like this. We go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So if I play 30, 31, 32, 33, we should sound like this. 1, and 2, and 3. And 1, and 2, and 3, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 2, and 3, and 2, and 3. Okay, so moving on to our next line, we next need this voicing of an A minor. So essentially play me a regular A minor, but with your index finger, so that's index finger on the 2nd fret on the G string. And then I'd add your ring finger to the 3rd fret on the A string, so it feels like you're playing a C. So in total, we have 2, 0, 0, 3. Now, same process. We're going to downstrum the beat of 1, 1, 2, and then the beat of 2, we're going to play that same harmonic 12th fret E string. So for bars 34, 35, we do that twice. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then for bar 36, we have a G6 chord, but if you notice on the sheet it has a little bracket 1, that's because it's a slightly different voicing. So that means index finger on the 2nd fret on the C string, and then we're actually going to use our pinky for the 5th fret on the A string. We're going to keep the E string open in the middle, so don't try and bar that. So this G6 voicing should be 0, 2, 0, 5. And again, we're going to use the exact same technique and rhythm. We're going to downstrum on 1, and then play that harmonic on the beat of 2, and that will be the same for bars 36 and 37. So we end up going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that means 34, 35, 36, 37 should sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 2 and 3 and 1. So here's the whole theme 2 part 1 all together, so we can play it. Okay, so 1 and 2 and 3 and
All right, guys, so big congrats on getting the first half of this tune down. Now, if you want to learn the second half of the song, Sammy's going to be teaching that in the part 2 lesson, which you can watch by clicking this link right here, or going to the site rockclass101.com and doing a search for the song's name. Now, also on that page were the tabs that you can print off to keep for your records, plus that really cool interactive on-screen tab here. So you can literally hit play, watch that tab scroll across in real time, highlight bars, loop sections, slow it down, all that fun jazz. So guys, again, I hope you enjoyed learning the first half of this, and we'll catch you in the part 2 lesson. Take care.